Yeah, good evening, everyone. Please, if you can hear me clearly, can you say yes in the comments if you can hear me? If you can hear me, can you type yes in the comment section? I know we are 1 hour late, but you just have to take it like that. I've told you, it's not that really convenient, but we just have to do it in that way. If you can hear me, can you comment? Please, if you can hear me clearly, I just want to know if my voice is audible enough. Okay, I can see Yusuf Zainab. If you can hear me clearly, can you type yes? Yes, I've seen you. You can try to call the attention of others. If you said we are meeting 9 to 10 and 9 is not working, I think by now we just have to manage it like that and just do whatever we want to do because we only have today. And of course, this time around, it's not that convenient. I just have to take it because I promised. So you have to, let's just manage it in this way and take it like that. So let's call others. Let's call others. I know if you are to watch other things, you know how you watch it. Can somebody just go back and say something in the group that we are live now? So we'll just be live for just 45 minutes, so that you can go and rest. Can we call on others? Can we call on others? Putting your name here is not that really necessary, but I just want to know those people that are here. Can somebody go back there and call attention of others to join us? I'm not going to do this again, oh. So let's call attention of others. So once again, good evening, everyone. As you can see, we just want to look at the fundamental statistical concept you need to know. And we started that some times ago. We just have to suspend it because of other commitments. So, but tonight, we will quickly go through some of the fundamental statistical concepts so that we know. So we'll be looking at it one after the other. And I want to tell you that whatever we discuss here, these are some of those things that that you need as a statistician, because there are some terminology they will be using, or there are some terminology they use in statistics as a statistics student or as an undergraduate student that you need to get yourself familiar with, so that you will not look as if you have never passed through the four walls of classroom as an undergraduate student. So we'll be looking at different of these statistical tools. We look at what is hypothesis. We look at what do we mean by significant level. What do you mean by decision rule? I've said once you join, just put your name in the comment section so that we know those that are joining us. Just put your name in the comment section. Let's know those that are joining us. Just put your name in the comment section. Let's know those that are joining us. Let me try to go back there and All right, so you're welcome once again. Like I said, so sorry for joining the class late. And if you have friends that are supposed to enjoy this class that are not here, please try to call their attention because I'm going to put down this video immediately after this class. I'm just using this medium to just do some little explanation on the statistical concept that you need to know. So I'll be picking it one by one. The first one of the most common statistical concepts we normally know is hypothesis. Almost all the time, you'll be hearing the word hypothesis, hypothesis, hypothesis here and there. What exactly is hypothesis, and what do you mean by hypothesis? So we are going to look at that. So what do you mean by hypothesis, and then what is hypothesis all about? So number one thing is that when we look at it, hypothesis is a tentative answer to the problem being investigated. I will repeat that. Hypothesis is a tentative answer to the problem being investigated. Like I said, for any research or in any research, the first thing a researcher does is that he or she identifies the problem. So, and there is no way, once you identify a problem, you need to set a kind of guideline for yourself. So one of the guideline or guided rules, something that will be guiding you in the research, is hypothesis and research question. And that is why I said hypothesis is a tentative answer to the problem being investigated. It's as simple as that. Hypothesis is the answer to the problem being investigated. It's like you are looking at a problem now. So let's say we are recording mass failure in mathematics. It's a problem. Mass failure in mathematics is a problem. So you have to look for the tentative answer to the problem. So what is now the answer to that problem you have identified? You can say, okay, possibly, maybe you look at it that the problem students are facing are study habits. So you can now say there is no significant difference between the study habits and the performance of students in mathematics. So that is a tentative answer to that problem you have identified. And that is why we conclude that what an hypothesis is a tentative answer to the identified problem, or hypothesis is a tentative answer to the problem being investigated. So it is also that's just the simple definition of an hypothesis. So it is also an informed or educated guess that is based upon priorities research. Something you are guessing, you are like, okay, I think one of the major issue could be this, it could be that, it could be this, it could be that. So what you are trying to do invariably is that you are more or less as providing an answer to the identified problem, providing an answer to the identified problem or problem investigated. So that is what an hypothesis is all about. So, and I say hypotheses are often stated in a noun form. Mostly, hypothesis is always stated in a noun form. If you use that one to join your point, you have killed it by saying hypotheses are often stated in a noun form. So, and when we said a noun form, like I said, there are two types of hypotheses. There is something we'll call a null hypothesis, and there is also what we call alternative hypothesis. So while you are trying to describe what an hypothesis is all about, you can say an hypothesis could be what? Could be null hypothesis or what? Alternative hypothesis. And that's why I said, in addition to the definition of hypothesis, hypotheses are often stated in what? In a null form, since it is a null hypothesis. And when we said a null hypothesis, don't forget that a null hypothesis is an hypothesis you set with the intention of what? Of having a kind of a negative mind about the hypothesis. So for instance, if I say there is no significant difference between the study habit of the student and the performance of students in mathematics, that is a null hypothesis, because you have said there is no. So the alternative hypothesis will now be there is. So if you want to kill it all, or you want to give a proper definition of an hypothesis, you can say an hypothesis is an answer to identify problem investigated. Hypothesis is what? is a tentative answer to the problem being investigated, and an hypothesis is stated in a null form. Is stated in a null form. And there are two types of hypothesis. We have what is called null hypothesis and what we call alternative hypothesis. So if hypothesis is clear to us, can we type yes in the chat? If hypothesis is clear to us, can we type yes in the chat? Can we type yes in the chat if hypothesis is clear to us? Okay, thank you, Tobiloba. All right, so that's a straightforward one. That's a straightforward one. So the next thing we want to look at is significant level. At what point do we say something is significant level? I know some of you, in the course of our physical class, we always hear the word at 0.05 level of significance, 0.01 level of significance. And I've tried to explain that during our physical class that in education, we make use of 0.05 level of significance, meaning that if you take a test and then you are expected that 95% of the students should be able to pass your examination. So if the 5% fail, you are still okay. So anything below that, it means that approach you are using is not good. That approach you are using is not what? Is not good. And everything above that, it shows it's good. And that is why we always talk about 0.05 level of significance in education. But if you try that in medical, you have put a lot of people into trouble. For instance, now, what medical people believe is that for every 10 patients you treat, or for every 100 patients you treat, 99 out of the patients should survive. So they base their own on 0.01 level of significance. 0.01. And when you calculate 0.01, you see that one is what? Yes, that's 99. So that means if they treat 100 patients and 1 out of 100 still die, they still see it as what? As something okay to some extent. But anything short of that, possibly they started seeing 5 people die out of 100. Oh, they will say something is wrong. It's either the treatment they were applying is not right or something is wrong somewhere. So the level of significance simply means is also denoted as alpha. Level of significance is always denoted as what? As alpha. Is always denoted as what? As alpha. And it is the probability of rejecting a significant word. Significant level is what? Is a probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. A statistical word, a significant level. Significant level simply means probability of rejecting. Significant level means probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. Rejecting the null hypothesis when it is what? When it is true. So I'm going to cite an example for you. For instance, if you perform what is it called? Your check at 0.05 level of significance, it indicates that the 5% risk of concluding that difference exists. So that means 5%, you said 0.05. When you calculate 0.05, that is what? Yes, that's 5%. So what significant level simply means is that it's talking about the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis. So, and it is denoted as alpha. It's denoted as what? As alpha. It's denoted as alpha. So if significant level is clear to us, can we type yes? I've said significant level is what? Is the probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. Probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is what? When it is true. Probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is what? When it is true. All right. Typing your name is not the major issue. but for you to have the better understanding of what this class is all about. And that is why it's not really compulsory. It's for those people that really want to know the fundamental statistical concept you need to know as a statistician. So the next thing we are going to talk about is we've looked at hypothesis, we have looked at significant level. Now let's look at decision rules. Decision rules. You remember during our physical class, I always talk about decision rule, decision rule, decision rule, decision rule. For every policy you make, there must be a rules. You need to have a rules. So what kind of rules do you set? Because without setting a rules, you will not know whether 0.05 level of significance is what is all right or not. So what is decision rule? A decision rule is a statement. Decision rule is a statement. Decision rule is a statement that tells under what circumstances. Decision rule is a statement that tells under what circumstances to reject the null hypothesis. To reject the null hypothesis. So a decision rule is a statement that tells under what circumstances to reject the null hypothesis. So that is, decision rule simply means at what level must you reject the null hypothesis. So that's just a decision rule. They just want to know that at what level are you going to reject the null hypothesis, because of course the null hypothesis is what we are going to set. So I'm sure we have discussed about that during our physical class. At what point do you reject the null hypothesis? The real language is that when the calculated value, calculated value is lesser than the table value, what you go and check on the table value, you will accept the null hypothesis. But if it is bigger, if what you calculate is higher than what you check on the table, then you are going to reject the null hypothesis and take the alternative hypothesis. So that is where decision rules mean. So decision rule simply means decision rule simply means what? It simply means what circumstances to reject the null hypothesis. It's as simple as that. What circumstances or what could happen before you reject the null hypothesis? That's the meaning of decision rule. Decision rule simply means what do you need to see before you reject the null hypothesis. So how many have we discussed? How many fundamental statistical concepts have we discussed? If you know that, can you put it in the chat? How many have we discussed? And type the three. Type the numbers we have discussed. The one you had. Type it. I'm waiting though. How many have we discussed? Can we type it in the chat? Can we type it in the chat? So how many have you discussed? I didn't ask you to put your name. How many have you discussed? How many have we discussed? Can we tell me all what we have discussed in the chat? Are we not here? Three. So what are the three? Austin, what are the three? Can we know the three? Can we know the three? Well, because of our time, I'm going to move to another thing. I'll be looking at, I'm going to discuss about another thing. So let's look at type 1 error and type 2 error. At what point do we say this is a type 1 error? At what point do we say this is a type 2 error? Type 1 error. Type 1 error is denoted as alpha. Even if you just put that one for an examiner, they will know you have an idea. Type 1 error is denoted as alpha, while type 2 error is denoted as beta. Type 1 error is for alpha, while type 2 error is for beta. So type 1 error, when do you commit type 1 error? When do you commit type 1 error? It is when the researcher rejects a true null hypothesis. When a researcher rejects the true null hypothesis you are supposed to support, you have commit type 1 error. You have commit type 1 error. When researcher rejects a true null hypothesis, when the researcher rejects a true null hypothesis, it does not support the null hypothesis. So when a researcher rejects a true null hypothesis, so you have commit what we call type 1 error. What about type 2 error? We said type 2 error is denoted as what? As beta. And it is not rejecting the null hypothesis. Not rejecting the null hypothesis. Not rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually false. When you did not reject the null hypothesis. The first one is that when you reject the null hypothesis that you are supposed to accept it, that's type 1 error. But type 2 error now is when means not rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually false. When it is actually false. When it is actually false. So I will repeat that. Type 1 error is denoted as alpha, while type 2 error is denoted as what? Beta. And type 1 error is committed when a researcher rejects a true null hypothesis. When a researcher rejects a true null hypothesis. When a researcher rejects a true null hypothesis, you have commit type 1 error. So type 2 error is not rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually false. You see that a null hypothesis is false and you are not rejecting it, you have committed type 2 error. You have committed type 2 error. You have committed type 2 error. So, we have just 10 more minutes. After the 10 more minutes, we call it a day. So we have just 10 more minutes for the class. So how many things have we discussed? Can you list those things we have discussed? Can we list those things we have discussed? Can we list those things we have discussed? Oh? Can we list those things we have discussed? Those things we have discussed, can we list them? I want you to itemize those things that we have discussed together. Let's list them. Can we list them? Can we list those things that we have discussed together? Okay. Decision rule, hypothesis, significant, type 1 error, type 2 error. Any other one? Any other one? Any other one? Any other one? Yes, we talk about hypothesis, we talk about type 1 error. What about type 2 error? What about type 2 error? Okay, hypothesis, significance, level, decision rule, type 1 error and type 2 error. So let's quickly look at inferential statistic. I decided to discuss that one last because it's actually a terminology, or let's say the umbrella. An inferential statistic build on, or let's take it in this way. Let's first of all look at what is descriptive statistic. What is descriptive statistic? What is descriptive statistic? Because without knowing descriptive statistic, it will be difficult for you to know the inferential statistic. So basically, statistic is basically divided into two. We have descriptive statistic and inferential statistic. So descriptive statistic is the event or outcome of an event that's described without drawing conclusion. A descriptive statistic is the event or outcome of events that are described without drawing conclusion, and it is concerned only with collection, organization, summarizing, analyzing, and presentation of an array of numerical, quantitative, and qualitative data. So that is a descriptive statistic. A good example of descriptive statistics is what? Mean, median, mode, standard deviation, percentile, kurtosis, correlation, or anything that has to do with description of data. Anything that has to do with description of both quantitative and qualitative data is what we refer to as what? As descriptive statistic. So the next one we'll talk about is inferential statistic. Inferential statistic. Inferential statistic. So the focus of inferential statistic is to summarize the properties of population. Is to summarize the properties of population from the known properties of a sample of population. Inferential statistic is summarizing the properties of population from the known properties of a samples of the population. Do we get that now? That is what we mean by inferential statistic. So far so good. We have discussed almost 6. Can we list out those 6? Yes, thank you, Sulaiman. Descriptive statistics is one of the branch of statistics that deal with summarizing and describing the basic features of a word, of a data. If you put it in that way too, it's good. It's good. It's good. So what other things? So what other statistical tools? Like I said, I don't want to spend more than 35 minutes here. So once it is 35 minutes, I will release all of you. Then possibly we'll meet in our physical class tomorrow. So we just discussed about inferential statistics now. Now let me ask you this question. The question is, how can inferential statistic, we have defined inferential statistic as one of the ways of summarizing the properties of population, especially from the from the known properties of a sample of population. That's what an inferential statistic is. But this inferential statistic, how can it assist a counselor? How can inferential statistic assist a counselor? Inferential statistic, how can it assist a counselor? So that's an homework. Once you get the response, you can come back here and drop it in the comment section. So in the chat, can somebody tell me the full meaning of ANOVA? ANOVA. Can someone tell me the full meaning of ANOVA? Can someone tell me the full meaning of ANOVA? Can someone tell me the full meaning of ANOVA? I can't get anyone that will tell me the full meaning of ANOVA. Full meaning of ANOVA. So because of our time, I've told you I'm not going to spend more than 35 minutes. So if you have any question now, can you drop your questions on the chat? Just try and drop your question on the chat and let's use the next 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to attend to that. Drop your question on chat. Drop your questions on the chat and let's look at it together. Yes, somebody has just tell me that it means analysis of variance. That's the full meaning of ANOVA. So can you drop your question on the chat? We have next 5 minutes more. Can you drop question on the chat? Can you drop question on the chat? If you have any question, drop your questions on the chat. I'm waiting. Oh, yes, I've seen that. The full meaning of ANOVA is analysis of variance. So I'm waiting for your questions. Please. I didn't give anyone any assignment. Oh, I didn't give any assignment. All what you just have to do is you have some of the questions you have to practice, and they are not far from what we have been discussing since. So like I said, the reason why we are doing this is just to make sure we become employable graduates. You know, there are unemployable graduates outside now, and so you don't have to join one of them. So you have to become an employable graduate, and there's no way you can become an employable graduate than to make sure you set a standard for yourself. The standard you set for yourself will not only but to those that are related to you. Those that are related to you. So I didn't ask you for any assignment. The assignment you have before you now is to start preparing. The time to start preparing is now. Don't wait till if of any examination. Start preparing now. So that's why we just look at those terms one after the other. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? Okay. I am present, sir. I don't need your presence, so I only want you to gain something here. So your presence doesn't make any this thing. Nobody is taking any attendance. If you want to pass, or if you want to become an outstanding student, these are some of those things you need to make yourself available for. So you don't need to wait for someone to come and be telling you that. You have to take the decision on your own. So take the decision on your own. The ball is in your court. The ball is in your court. So can someone define statistic for me? What is statistic? What is statistic? So I'm waiting. What is statistic? So all those one are not something I'll be solving here. So just know in your mind that for every student of statistics, the very first question they may likely ask you is that what is statistics? So, and we said it's a collection of what? Collection, analyzing, uh, analyzing of statistical data. So that's what statistics is all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I promised, I'm going to end the class in the next 40 minutes, and we have 2 minutes to that time now. And I think with this little thing we have said tonight, it should be able to guide you on those fundamental statistical concepts you need to know. Yes, thank you. It says statistics is a branch of mathematics that involves collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data. Thank you. Make sure you don't use ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT and you say something that is different from the professional, that means you are trying to put yourself into trouble, and we shall not get into trouble by God's grace. So if you have any question, you are free to drop your question. So why I leave here for now. So if you have any question, you can go ahead and ask your question. So you can drop this. I will still open this place for the next 10 minutes. So if you have any question, you are free to ask your question. I will still open this place for the next 10 minutes. If you have any question, drop your question here. If you have any question, you are free to drop your question. Feel free to drop your questions.